Stephen, I really wanted to have you here to talk about something that, funny enough, in 8 years and 500 guests, we've never actually had a candid talk about death. No. And I know it's something that you talk about, and I was asking myself, I wonder who's going to enjoy this show, and then I realized, well, they all have a vested interest in this topic, and they all know people that've gone through this or are going through it as they speak, or will, and yet, from everything I read about you, we're doing it all wrong. Or we need to at least be conscious of how we're doing it, or at least we need to have this conversation. So I'd love to talk to you about that today. Okay. For some reason, I'm kind of compelled to tell you about some of my experiences with death. I was wondering if we could start there.
Your show.
Okay.
Sure.
I had 4 grandparents who are now passed. Again, people from kind of the Midwest, and as a young kid, I saw them be parts of my life, and we can talk more about that in your later book. They were real elders, kind of, parts of the family and hubs of the family, and we were always taught that they were, kind of important, and we would kind of go to see them as pilgrimages for Christmases, and it wasn't just because they were older, it was like this kind of deep level of knowledge and respect, something, unfortunately, I don't think my kids will have with their grandparents. But, when they passed, I was a bit younger and never really had much closure or experience with what's happening. I think I went to one of their funerals. A little bit later in my life, one of my good friends died of cancer at about 42 years old, and I was godfather to his daughter, and I got to see him kind of waste away, and it was a real hard thing for me to watch. And at the same time, I think it taught me a lot of lessons. One of them, I think, was leaving my job in banking and even starting this show. I think it just really hit me in the stomach that I was mortal and that there was something more going on here in my life. My other experience with death was my own overdose from heroin in New York City in 2001. That's probably the least experience I had with death because I don't really remember. I just remember having to kind of face myself that, wow, okay, you almost ended this. And at the time I didn't care, but I think it caused me to make some decisions later in life. And then my final one I had last year, I was down in the jungles of Costa Rica, and I had a pretty heavy ayahuasca ceremony, and there I felt like I really died about 20 different times, and it was definitely not pleasant. I remember feeling it, how unpleasant it was, and how I was really trying to fight as a human. And at the same side, I saw this entity that was Gaia, and everything was just going to be dissolved anyways, and there was no need to be emotional about this life changing from one molecule being to this piece. And so it's kind of general, but these are just some of the thoughts I had around death and some of the things that went through my mind about a year ago. I don't know if that helps to start this discussion, but I was curious, how do you usually start talking about this concept with people?
Well, it's not really a crowd pleaser, and it's not a small talk thing. It doesn't submit to being clever or coy, especially ironic, all the high water marks of casual conversation in urban centers in particular. So I probably don't. The truth, I'm kind of paid to do it, and otherwise it's proper that I should probably stay at home. And then if somebody inquires after it, then I'm happy to be available. But as an advocate, no, I don't see myself that way at all. I don't push anything in that respect. I was introduced a couple of years ago as a visionary, which was intemperate and kind, but I'm not sure it was accurate. But I was not happy with it. So when I got up to respond, I thanked them, and I said, a word came to me, which seems more accurate to the enterprise that I've been burdened with, divisionary. I said, I think that's maybe closer to what I do. So, dying is not a user-friendly proposition in a culture that doesn't believe in endings. Like even the ayahuasca characterization you made, like there's no ending. And people love the word transition. It's kind of, it eases things, and apparently endings are illusions. Illusion is an illusion. Endings are real, And that's what marriage is. It's the end of everyone else you could have been with. It's an ending. And that's how it begins. And human conception is the end of ovulation. It's an end. And I don't know why, well, that's not entirely true, but I just say as a figure of speech, it remains mysterious to me. The hostility towards endings is presented as a life-positive orientation, that it's life-affirming. But there's nothing about life that refusing to end affirms. Because when you observe, like speaking as a farming person now, so we have Earth, which we're deeply responsible to and for. And what is Earth? What's dirt? And the answer is everything that didn't make it this far. That's what it is. It's not a symbol. It's death in your hand. And once you see it, you know how it comes to be. You have to have death to end up with that stuff. And if you don't have that stuff, you will not have anything growing. So what is life rooted in? It's not rooted in life. That's just, there's no observation that sustains that prejudice. Life is rooted in death and requires death. So life is not life-giving. Life is life-taking. That's its gig, you see? Whereas death grants life another shot. It's enormously generous. But the refusal to die turns into a kind of exercise in opting out of this arrangement. And don't get me wrong, it's not easy to come around to crafting some willingness to die. It's a counterintuitive, utterly hope-free proposition. But that's the pitch, that if you're unwilling to die, then your manner of dying takes as you go. And what dying is really supposed to be is you sort of releasing your death grip on everything that granted you your certainties, your stabilities, your sense of yourself and all of that. And you're basically cashing out. And hopefully with a sense of gratitude about the whole operation. That of course everything didn't work out. Most of it didn't work out. By most standard understandings of work out. But it was remarkably just in some strange way that you made it this far. A lot of people didn't. I mean, nobody who's dying ever does the math on, a lot of people don't get to die at 70 or 80. They die at 7. That's where I was. I superintended death of a lot of children. And there's much easier ways to make a living.